What's up, beautiful people of YouTube? You know, lately I've been struggling with, well, a lot, like depression and anxiety and everything, and I'm tired of everyone kind of just like feeling sorry for me, I guess. Like I've been told that a couple of times now, and it just kind of makes me feel like crap. And it made me think about like where I came from, like my roots, you know, like why am I at where I'm at today? And a big part of that is my recovery, my my drug use, you know. 8 years worth of crystal meth abuse. And today I want to show y'all kind of my rehab stories. I have my crystal meth story, which means a lot to me. I tell y'all pretty much my whole entire story on how everything happened, and into a 6-part series. By the way, this is the very first rehab that I ever went to, right here. That is Holistic Recovery Centers. And so pretty much this whole entire video is gonna be me explaining and showing y'all all of the rehabs that I went to, and pretty much the story behind them. So right here in front of me, this is again the very first rehab that I went to. This is the back of the building, and I actually used to sit in this spot right here. And I kind of want to tell y'all a little bit of my background before I go into detail about everything. So, you know, I had been using crystal meth for 8 years, and I finally got to a point where even like my best friend slash drug dealer was pretty much just like, you need help. So I didn't know anything about rehab, and I pretty much, he had connections here in Florida. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and he called up a marketer, and pretty much I was on a plane, and I flew from Dallas, Texas to here in Miami. And I didn't get to go here to a Holistic Recovery Center immediately. I had to go to a Detox. Detox was like way west Florida, like in the middle of Florida by the Everglades or something, where literally it was like holes. If you ran away, you were pretty much dead, or you would have gotten eaten by an alligator. Detox for me was pretty much me sleeping for like a week straight. Then after Detox, I ended up here, and this is a PHP program. They also have IOP programs. So PHP means you actually live at the rehab for an extended period of time. Usually it's 30 to 45 days. I did 47 days my first time through Holistic Recovery Center, and it was great. I liked it, but at the same time I was going through a lot of things. It was my first experience. I wasn't quite serious about getting sober yet, and so I took that 47 days to learn pretty much more about drugs. And so I ended up flying back from here, Miami, all the way back to Dallas, Texas. Immediately I moved back in with my dad in his apartment, and immediately started using. My dad kicked me out, so I started bawling. I called my best friend. He let me live with him for a couple of weeks. My drug addiction got so bad again, you know, it went from Ritalin back over to meth immediately within a 2-week span. And I ended up using meth again. After 2 weeks, I decided to hop in my car, pack everything I could minimally, and drive all the way from Dallas, Texas, back here to rehab. I had decided then and there that I needed help, but seriously this time. I needed to take it seriously. And I was still using. I couldn't stop willingly by myself. And so I decided to hop in my car and continue using all the way here to Florida. And I ended up parking right in there. And I had already had a marketer that was ready to pick me up as soon as I got back. And so I get here, and I'm like, I don't want to stop using. Even though I was serious about quitting, like, I couldn't quit physically myself. And so I get back here, and I'm just like, I just want to use one more time. Just one more time. And so I was parked right there, and I decided to eat like an entire bag, like this much meth, and just down it in my mouth. At the same time, my marketer was on my way to come and get me. And so I start freaking out, and all of a sudden things get cold, and I start seeing like shots of light. Like, it was crazy. And then I start to like pretty much like fall out. Like, everything was going black, and I could feel my heart beating faster than what it's supposed to, pretty much. And I thought I was gonna die, like right then and there. And so I just started praying, and all of a sudden I like look up in the sky, and it immediately starts raining. It was the most like surreal moment that I've ever had, and it's one of the biggest reasons why I decided to pretty much believe in the higher power that I choose to believe is God today. And so that helped me calm down. My marketer ends up pulling over, picked me up. I was higher than I had ever been before. After Detox, I came back here, and I stayed here for 45 days, and then this time, instead of flying back home, I decided to stay here and go through the IOP, which is you graduate pretty much from PHP, living in a facility, and then IOP is where just like once or twice a week you just go to a facility like this for a couple of hours, and you have groups, and that's it. You pretty much live your life like you would any other day. And so with that said, like, Jake, where did you live? Jake, where did you work? How did you end up being able to stay here in Florida? Well, I lived in my first halfway house was right here, and there was like 5 or 6 of us that actually lived with each other, and we all had to pay rent. And so I got a job working for Domino's, delivering pizzas. Wait, guys, no. This was the second halfway house that I lived at. This was the first halfway house that I lived at. Yep, this is where it all started. This was so HRC actually had 2 halfway houses, and I started at that halfway house, but the clients I was living with, they kept stealing my socks, and it pissed me off. Stupid thing to be pissed off about, but I was like, let me move to the other facility, and so that's why I moved back. That's why I moved to the Miami halfway house. Yeah, and I loved the Miami house. I stayed there, pretty much just restarted my life sober here in Florida. I end up staying there for like several months, and I pretty much get to a point where I'm like, I think I've got my crap together, you know? Like, I think it's time I can drive back home and actually be a normal human being and not do meth or drugs. And so I decided to drive my car back to Texas. Everything went well for like several months, maybe like half a year or something. I just stayed home. I had jobs. I was, I think, going to school. I end up like dabbling back into like drinking and smoking weed, and then you know, I end up finding another prescription for the Ritalin, and then that always led back to my use. It got bad again, and so I decided to get help again. And so I called some of my friends that were here, and they pretty much hooked me up with this spot right here. This place was my third rehab, and it's called Above All Recovery Center. I actually don't think this place is open. Sadly, a lot of the rehabs here in South Florida are just, they're not good. They go bankrupt, and there's like a lot of insurance fraud here, and a lot of marketing scams, and it sucks. But this was above all. So this time I did not drive. I did not drive back to Florida. This time I flew back. You're probably wondering, like, Jake, how could you like afford all of this? And it's with insurance. And you know, if you actually really do want help, and you're willing to like go to a facility for help, whether it's a PHP program or an IOP program, there are ways that you can get help without having insurance. I know a lot of people that have actually gotten scholarships to even go to Above All. Same with HRC. They just were scholarshiped. They talked to the people at the facilities and they were like, I want to get my life together, but I don't have the money or the insurance. Can you please help me? And you'll either be put on a waiting list, which is, I hate that. I hate that people that are struggling have to be put on a waiting list. And other times they have room and they can take you immediately. Having gone through all of these rehabs and everything, I've kind of set myself up for my own program that I've kind of created for myself that works for me. It took me 10 years to figure it out, but it works for me. I think recovery should be personalized. I don't think it should be you have to do it this way or else you're gonna die or relapse. I don't believe in that. I believe that everyone has their own way of staying sober. My drug story, part 1 through 6, part 6, I actually talk a lot about what my version of recovery looks like for me, that works for me, that might could work for you. So going through Above All for the 3rd time, you know, the people were like, do you actually plan on staying in Florida this time? I ended up like wanting to go to another halfway here in Florida and just start over, and pretty much like the Above All staff, not all the staff, but like the counselors and everything didn't like me very much, I feel like, and because I already kind of knew Florida by this point, and I already knew other like IOP programs, and I you know, Above All has their own IOP program, but I was like, I don't want to go here. I'll do PHP here, go through the 30-45 days of rehab with Above All, and then I'm going to a different facility, and they didn't like that. They wanted to continue hitting my insurance for more money, I guess, and so I end up going to a different IOP, which, praise God. So I ended up moving into these right here. I get out of Above All and get driven over here, and all of these houses right here were all together. There's like rooms in this front of the house, rooms in the back, rooms in the front, rooms in the back. And so the IOP that I go to is called Discovery Wellness Center, which I still go to occasionally. I love these people. That's the best IOP in the world, hands down. I've actually been through them twice, and I actually just went inside to talk to them. If you need help, I can connect you with the people here. So this IOP program was separate at the time of the houses that I was living at. So the halfway houses had their own business, and that was called Revival, and that was a separate business from Discovery. And what happened was Revival ends up shutting down, and at the same time, this is when Hurricane Irma was coming, and so everyone was leaving, going back home, or they were relapsing because they had nowhere to stay because the halfway houses were getting shut down, or they were finding a different halfway house to live at. And so I decided to drive out of Florida back home during Hurricane Irma, and I ended up just staying there for a while, 6 months to be exact. And of course I get swallowed back into the whole meth thing. I decide to come back to Florida. At this point I had already started my YouTube channel, so you can actually see this process happening on my channel. But I end up deciding to drive back here to Florida, and I end up at this house right here, where I lived for a really long time. See, after Revival got shut down, Discovery Wellness Center, where I just got back from, decided to open up their own halfway houses, and so that house right there was their first halfway house, and so I lived there for a really long time. But the clients that were there weren't paying rent, of course, and the first halfway house just ended up not working out so well, and so I end up having to find somewhere else to live. And at this point, I'm just like sick of living at halfways, sick of like all of the freaking rehab shuffle type stuff, the insurance, like all of these bad things that are happening, which, by the way, Wellness Center Discovery has nothing to do with any of the negative sides of any of that. Literally, this was just because the clients couldn't get their together. I ended up finding a roommate that's also in recovery that had his own little townhouse like here in Delray, and so I decided to move in with this guy, and that was pretty much the end of like my halfway house experience. When I came back here, I didn't go to a fourth rehab, a fourth PHP anyways, where you live in the rehab. I just went to Discovery Wellness Center, and that was good. That was good for me. So now I kind of want to give y'all a little bit of a background about what it was like actually being in the facilities. Okie dokie, so a lot of people ask like, what's rehab like? So I want to share what a day in the life kind of seemed like for all 3 different rehabs that I went to. So let me paint a picture for you, okay? So we would have the facility, like the actual building where all of the clients, all of like the staff, all of the counselors were like right here. And then on this side we have the residence where all of the clients would sleep, where our home was essentially for the next 30 to 45 days. We would wake up, you know, drink our coffee, have an hour in the morning to chill at the residence, and super early in the morning we would all pack up in the druggy buggies, which are the big vans. We'd drive over to the facility where like everything was held, the groups and everything. It depends on which rehab you go to, but pretty much we just held different types of groups. Some of the groups are just males, some of the groups are just females, some of the groups are just people that had a problem with this specific drug. During the group times, you know, some people would get called out to go see their therapist, and we would do that for like 8 hours pretty much. It's like going to school, you know? And so at the end of the day, we would all pack back up in the druggy buggies and we would drive back to home, the residence. And we would get to chill pretty much for a little bit. Each resident pretty much had a whole bunch of rooms, you know? Imagine like one small, very small apartment complex. It was like 4 beds per apartment, if you will. It's a lot smaller than an apartment. It's like a studio. But they would smash like 4 beds in one room just so more clients could come. I would live with like 3 people in the same room. And we would chill, we would like take a shower or whatever, and then we would all get back together, back in the druggy buggies, and go to a meeting. There's AA meetings, Alcoholics Anonymous. There's NA, Narcotics Anonymous. CMA, Crystal Meth Anonymous. OA, Overeaters Anonymous. There's Smart Recovery. There's so many different types of meetings, but they would drive us to these meetings. So pretty much that sums up like what a day at rehab was like. And I would have to say the best part about going through rehab was all of the friends that I made in the process. Being surrounded by like-minded people that are going through mental illnesses or going through the whole drug thing is the best part of it. It's not even necessarily the counselors, the groups, the learning about like being in recovery or whatever type of meetings you decide to participate in. It's about connection. It's about making friends and being accountable for each other, and that's really the best thing I got out of going to a facility like this. I've always believed that there's always like a leading factor. There's always a reason why people are using these substances, and I always point it back to mental illnesses. Like everyone is going through something before they decide to take their first hit of heroin, whether they decide to put that needle in their arm, whether they decide to roll that bowl of meth. Like, I truly believe it all has to do with what's going in your head prior to the drug use, you know? I feel like it's important for people to understand that the drug is not the leading problem. The leading problem is you and being okay with who you are and finding balance like in your own life. Because I've seen it in so many of my friends and other clients through rehab. They get out of rehab. I was one of these people. They get out of rehab and they just go right back to using drugs. That's all they know. Or they go back home, immediately relapse, you know? That was me. It wasn't until I started connecting with other people and truly trying to figure out who I was as a person is when I stopped using drugs. I've been clean for like almost 2 years. I had one little lapse. There's a relapse, which is a long period of time using, and then there's a lapse where you do it once and you know what you did wrong, and you continue to live your life as if everything was okay. And I had one little lapse, and it taught me a lot, actually, and you can see that on my channel if you want to go back and look at it. It's called Doing a Drug Addict Study on Myself. I just really want to help as many people as I possibly can, in the hopes that maybe I can change someone's lives through these videos or something. But I don't know, I just wanted to share my experience with rehab with y'all. So if you enjoyed this, please give it a like and subscribe, not for the sake of me just saying it because I like making YouTube videos, but because it actually helps the YouTube algorithm, and more people will see this, and I'll be able to reach out a lot farther. And so with that said, I love y'all, and if anyone needs help, do not be scared or afraid to reach out with me. Alrighty guys.